for it, House Bill 1414, which has been read. Mr. Chief Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, engrossed House Bill 1414, introduced by Representatives Zaiser and other House and Senate sponsors. Engrossed House Bill 1414 is a bill for an act to create and enact a new section to Chapter 34-06 of the North Dakota Century Code relating to a state minimum wage. Mr. Speaker, your Industry, Business, and Labor Committee recommends amendments which are passed on the previous sixth order. When so amended, and engrossed recommends do not pass on engrossed House Bill 1414 by a vote of 8 yeas, 3 nays, 4 absent, and 0 not voting. Mr. Speaker.
Representative Becker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, members of the Assembly, your Committee on Industry, Business, and Labor recommends a do not pass on House Bill 1414 by a vote of 8 yeas, 3 nays, 4 absent. HB 1414 intends to increase the state minimum wage annually according to the Midwest Consumer Price Index. The committee finds that North Dakota's current economy displays very well the success of free market supply and demand labor. In Bismarck, for example, the effective minimum wage is nearly $10, which is significantly higher than if this bill had been instituted in 1998 when the minimum wage was $5.15. Minimum wage laws are poorly targeted policy. The intent is to raise the income of the working poor, yet less than a third, and in some studies less than 20% of minimum wage workers come from families which are low income. A significant amount of those workers are actually teenagers from middle income families. The North Dakota Department of Labor gave testimony indicating that 1.5% of the 6,000 people employed in North Dakota make minimum wage. My 15-year-old daughter is one of those people. She also shares tips, so she's actually above minimum wage, and that's sort of further underscores that the number is actually even lower than what may be indicated. Labor, like anything, follows laws of supply and demand. If the labor pool is small relative to available jobs, wages will go up. If the labor pool is in excess, wages will go down or perhaps stay the same. Following this practice is the most efficient way to have the greatest number of people employed and at the fairest wage. Making a low wage may mean that it's difficult to make ends meet. However, it allows young or unskilled workers the opportunity to learn a trade, also known as on-the-job training. They also get to work their way through the ranks to a higher earning job. And if you'll permit me, Mr. Speaker, one example would be the employer who has the budget to hire 3 entry-level jobs at $10 each. Those 3 people will all be employed, they'll learn skills, and they'll have the ability to improve their station in life, perhaps becoming managers, vice presidents, or even the CEO. But if government steps in to force the employer to pay a higher wage, for example, $15 an hour, the legislators and bureaucrats can feel good that they helped increase income for low-wage earners, but the problem is the employer's budget did not change. Now he can only hire 2 entry-level positions. For those 2, it was nice to have a higher wage for the first couple of years, but it didn't actually change their overall opportunity. In fact, it did completely eliminate all opportunity for the 3rd worker because he's left unemployed. Government will, however, take some of the money from the other 2 workers, amongst all the other workers at the job, and give it to the laid off and unemployed 3rd worker, who can depend on his subsistence from government. Yes, he would have been earning a low wage, but it's better than no wage. And remember, he also would have been learning a skill set and had the hope and chance of improving his lot in life, both of which contribute to his self-worth and dignity. Minimum wage laws which exceed the federal laws aren't needed. Further, they tend to cause higher unemployment for young and unskilled workers. Your Committee on Industry, Business, and Labor recommends do not pass by a vote to 8-3, and we strongly urge your support. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Is there any discussion? Representative Zaiser.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker and the Assembly, I respect and understand the views of Representative Becker and the IBL committee. However, one of the things that came out in that committee, the report that people thought there were maybe only a couple thousand people living on minimum wage. But actually there was a report out of that committee that there are over 6,000 people living on minimum wage. And I brought this bill from some constituents in my district as well as other people that feel this way. There are lots of benefits. Certainly I understand the economic free enterprise system. That gets pretty complicated. But on the other hand, if you're living in a car or taking time staying with a brother and then a sister and whatever, not having a home of your own, it's pretty tough. And there are people living on minimum wage. We often had a straw man discussion in committee where members of the committee, and I applaud them, are often, or most often, I think in almost every case, were paying above and beyond minimum wage. That's to be commended. And I understand they said that was what the market dictated. I understand that. But if we put money, a few more pennies a year, and that's what this increase would be, which wouldn't even take place until 2014, we're actually putting money in the pockets of people that have to spend it because they don't have any other money. On the other hand, if we maybe put some money on the front end, we maybe can minimize some of the social welfare safety net costs on the back end of the program. So I think there are a number of benefits to this, and I realize where this is going. The other aspect, I should say, that I think eventually the federal government will raise the minimum wage, and probably will have to jump by $5 or $6 an hour, and instead of by maybe 12 cents a year or something like that. So I think with that, I'm going to call it quits, and I certainly understand where this is going. Thank you. I hope we can get a few green votes.
Is there further discussion? Representative Amerman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the Assembly, yeah, I'm not even back one day yet, and I'm already at the microphone. So, you know, the minimum wage, I've probably sponsored or co-sponsored this bill just about every session I've been up there. The presenter of the bill, the carrier of the bill was right. You know, the free market, this legislature and government in total, there is always aspect. Let it work. And get out of the way and just let the market work. And it does. And it drives up whatever the case might be. But there's always a segment of society, maybe it's a small segment, that needs their government, that needs us, or needs Congress out in Washington. And they seem to be the ones that are passed over and overlooked the most. And that's why, you know, this small gesture, it's a good bill. I don't know how many people it involves. The sponsor of the bill spoke of 4,000 to 6,000. But they need us to try to bump them up a little bit. It was mentioned, and I have to say, Mr. Speaker, I have a hard time following the bill carrier. Either my hearing is not too good or his mic wasn't too good, but it was just a little quiet. But he mentioned a lot of people, I think it was his daughter or somebody, worked under minimum wage, and then plus tips she made over minimum wage. I'm not so sure if I got that right or not, but that's another thing that's always bothered me, that waitresses can be paid $4 an hour, and then my tips make up so she's getting above minimum wage. Well, I always thought my tips went for good service, kindness, and so on and so forth. I didn't know it was to subsidize the owner that owns the place so he doesn't have to pay the regular minimum wage. But this is a good bill, and like the sponsor said, we probably know where it's going, and in probably 2 years it might be coming back. But anyway, I got the dust off my microphone, and I want to thank you very much. And if I may, just for a second, thank you all for your prayers and kindness in my absence on behalf of my family. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the House has before it for final consideration House Bill 1414. The clerk will open the key and you may record your vote. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? The key will be closed and the clerk will take the record. Final vote shows 24 yea, 70 nay, 0 absent and not voting. House Bill 1414 is declared failed. Continuing on the